Hello, everyone, and welcome. It is 2 o'clock on the nose, so we're going to wait just a minute to get started and let everyone gather. All right, we are going to go ahead and get started. An official re-welcome to all of you, and thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Ginny Lee. I'm the Managing Director for Partner Success across the Virtual Tour Partnership, and I am very pleased to be joined by a couple of additional individuals today. We have Duncan McLean, the Vice President of Partner Success for Undergraduate Enrollment Services here at EAB, and also Bill Wilson, who is the Senior Director for Partner Development. So we are all very excited to have you, and we look forward to this really exciting discussion. From an administrative perspective, just wanted to make sure that you are all aware of these housekeeping items. If you do want to connect to audio, please refer to the webinar confirmation email that you received in your inbox. There are a couple of different approaches to doing so. If you would like to ask a question, you can go to the bottom of that box as you see here on the screen, and we as the panelists will receive that. We'll try to get through as many as possible as part of our discussion today, but no worries. If we are not able to, then we will follow up with you individually. And then finally, there will be a brief exit survey at the conclusion of today's webinar. So if you have just 1 minute, we would really value your feedback in preparing for further discussions down the line. So with that, we will jump right in. So we, as you all know, are EAB, and we are at our heart a best practices research firm that actually enables your success through enrollment success, student success, and institutional success. We know that a number of you are intimately familiar with all that EAB offers, but what we wanted to do today, especially because this is a virtual tour partner focused webinar, is really focus obviously on the enrollment space, but also the increasing intersection between enrollment and student success, which is an exciting opportunity for the virtual tour itself. As that entire terrain sort of expands and evolves, EAB and our ecosystem is continuing to evolve with it. So as I mentioned, we do have Duncan McLean with us. He is actually going to walk us through EAB's next generation enrollment ecosystem. And then we will roll into some partner stories and inspiration and results related to the enhancement opportunities that we articulated back in September for those of you who were able to join us then, as well as some additional evolutions that we are excited to share that have come to pass a little bit more recently. And then finally, we'll conclude with a call to action for those of you, for all of you actually, how to work closely with our partner success team in order to maximize the virtual tour results to their greatest extent. So with that, I will turn it over to Duncan.
Thanks, Jenny. I'll share a little bit about Enroll 360. So we've always believed at EAB that in times of disruption, we need to innovate faster to try to create more advantages for our partners. And so over the past year, throughout the pandemic, we've really been pushing the envelope on thinking about what our innovation roadmap should look like post-pandemic. That includes UVisit. It also includes search. We've studied millions of interactions across our database to understand student behavior. We've done additional survey research with students, and we've talked to experts across EAB and beyond. And the output of this work is a new and transformational approach to how we think about search and how we leverage the virtual tour inside and alongside search. And so all of this is enabled by a new ecosystem of digital properties that we believe are going to drive more engagement from students throughout search, and UVisit will be an anchor point in that ecosystem. So you might be thinking, why are we talking about search in a UVisit webinar? Well, first, I know many of you are search partners, and it's great to have you on the line. And so we do want to share how these connect and how the synergies will elevate both search and UVisit. And for those of you that aren't search partners, we want you to know how important UVisit is in our innovation roadmap, and also want you to know that our search data infrastructure is going to make the tour better as we measure more and more student interactions inside of our tours. So Ginny, you can advance. I'll spend 5 minutes on this direction, and then we'll dive back into specifically the tour. As part of this exercise, we've asked ourselves, what is the post-pandemic recruitment environment going to look like? What are the 4 key challenges we're going to see? We know the demography and the affordability challenges will persist, but 4 distinct post-COVID challenges. We expect list source turbulence to continue. So College Board and ACT are navigating a test optional environment. That means it's harder to find student names. We've seen huge move to a digital student recruitment process, as you know and have managed. And we think that's going to persist post-pandemic. And we'll see some hybrid, of course, but the digitization will persist. We've seen a move to stealth shopping and students self-guiding and navigating the process of student search on their own terms and in their own sequence. And we know students are going to demand more authentic and more personal connections. And so that's led us to a place of saying, what are enrollment and marketing leaders going to have to do to win in the future environment? And so Jenny, you can advance. There's 6 things we believe that our campaigns and our campus partners are going to have to do to out-recruit competition in the years ahead. First, we think channel is going to be more important than ever. We've seen proliferation of channel, and students are in more places that you and your campus need to be present and winning in those channels. We think audience is going to be important. I've mentioned digitization. We're working to find more timing advantages for partners in search with an ongoing and responsive marketing that stays in touch with students faster. And then really leaning in on authenticity and authentic personal connections and enabling a stealth shopping experience. So with these 6 beliefs, over the past year, we've asked ourselves, what are the digital properties and the digital experiences students need to have for our partners to win this channel war? So Jenny, you can advance. That has led us to pursue a pretty assertive acquisition lineup that you see on the screen, including UVisit. And what we believe we've built is an ecosystem of best-in-breed digital properties that are critical to driving a student's optimal search experience. So a readiness platform in Intersect, exploration platform in CapEx, a virtual experience in UVisit, and now most recently a peer-to-peer platform with Wiser. All of this is great, but we've asked ourselves, how do we line this up to enable the best student experience throughout this ecosystem? And so what we've come to believe is that search in the future is going to be non-linear. So advance once more, Jenny. The vision here is that we need to enable students to find your campus on their terms in their own order. So some students might start with CapEx and then find your virtual tour through CapEx. Another set of students might respond to an email and then go visit Intersect and plan with their high school counselor before going to your EDU to find UVisit. Another student might be a first source lead from UVisit. And so we're working with Enroll 360 to embrace this non-linear search with a new ecosystem. And so pivoting to where the product is headed with search and UVisit, our vision is to create inquiry pools that come from all different types of campaigns in a connected fashion. And so we plan to put pixel data around this entire ecosystem to give our partners more visibility on where students are coming from and how they're interacting with multiple sources. We also desire to make these nodes on the ecosystem self-reinforcing. So for example, we'll start layering in UVisit content and CapEx profile pages and display ads through the direct marketing and graphic emails. And so the UVisit creative content, which as many of you know is world-class in its dynamic 360 nature, will show up across this ecosystem. And from there, with the data we garner from student behavior across all of these different digital platforms, our fulfillment and cultivation work for students that do inquire can be much more dynamic because we'll have an understanding of their digital body language and how they've engaged across this ecosystem. So that's the quick summary of the future of search from EAB's perspective. UVisit will be a center point And there's 4 key things we've outlined here that we believe are really game changers for how search drives engagement. In particular, I'll highlight, we expect in the future that inquiry files are no longer yes, no to the student inquiry, but that we can return to you much more in-depth information on how and what the student is engaging with across the web. So that's a little bit of context on where we're heading with search, how important UVisit will be to this trajectory. And I'll pass back to Ginny to dive us deeper into the UVisit terrain specifically.
Wonderful. Thank you, Duncan. And as Duncan mentioned, everything that we just discussed is really preparing for and supporting you all in a post-COVID era. And so we actually wanted to share a little data as to how transformational this era has been for any sort of digital engagement, any sort of immersive type work. As you can see, these results are pretty incredible for what we call, quote unquote, the college vertical. So on the far right-hand side, you can see the difference between April through October of 2019, obviously pre-COVID, and then where we were post-COVID. And we're here to share with you, as I'm sure you have noticed and are preparing for every single day in your own worlds, that transformation is not going anywhere. So that is why we're incredibly excited to stand on that foundation and continue to build off of that as we think about how are you leveraging the virtual tour itself and everything associated with that package, as well as the different elements we're here to talk about today, which is the stories, the transformation that folks are experiencing with regards to the enhancements, as well as some additional different elements to maximize that impact. And so just as a quick refresher, this is the way we think about the overarching virtual tour package: best in class content, all of those interactive elements that drive a lot more engagement, which obviously leads to action, because ultimately you all are looking for results, for impact, for what is actually, for folks who are actually expressing interest in learning more about your institution. And that turns out to be a really nice, beautiful sort of circuitous approach where that flows directly into our performance insights. We take a look at that in partnership with you, and in turn, that influences our best-in-class content, which influences the inquiry capture, et cetera, et cetera. There are a lot of additional wraparound aspects to maximizing impact that we want to talk about today as they relate to those enhancements and as they relate to those key dimensions of the package. So we're excited to jump in related to all of those. So that's how we will frame our time today. I'm going to start with the interactive elements, and I will go through a couple of these sections, and then Bill Wilson will pick up and take you through some others. And as we said, we'll wrap up at the end with a bit of a call to action for you all in terms of how we can all work together to maximize those results together. So on those interactive elements, this should look very familiar to most of you, where those hotspots, the positional media, the action zones, basically the best way to engage with the student is obviously really translating into additional results. This is something that we're excited to share the latest data with you all. So when you compare our previous type of platform, which we would term essential, so some of you have been partners for nearly a decade, and if you still have that original sort of essential version of the platform, we highly encourage you to consider how powerful those immersive elements might be. As you can see, if we started in fiscal year 21, Q1, which is the July through September timeframe, and all was equal, you can see the dramatic increase that the immersive tours have seen in inquiry rates across the last couple of quarters. So we're pretty excited to see that. Obviously, depending on the size of your institution, your approach to those inquiries, that will mean something a little bit different to each of you. But by and large, it is hard to argue with the fact that deeper engagement and the ability for Gen Z to control their own experience is an incredibly powerful one that actually does translate not only to engagement itself, but ultimately to clicking that button and to action that we're all looking for together. So what happens from there? Many of you are familiar with the conversational inquiry form, which is our upgraded inquiry form. Wanted to bring you under the tent as to the testing that we did, and we continue to do this through the learning agenda. just to make sure that we are constantly innovating on all of those enhancements that we have activated, as well as whatever exists within that virtual tour package. And we pair that with your feedback to make sure that we're always evolving the platform and the technology itself, as well as the services that enable you to take advantage of those. So this is a great example of that, where we conducted an A/B test on uvisit.com with all the visitor types. So students, parents, etc. What we found is that the two dimensions of reordering questions and actually limiting those required fields are what drove a 2x increase in that completion rate. And really, as we think about how does this apply to those of you who do or do not have the conversational inquiry form activated, two important questions to ask yourselves as you engage with your students in this respect. Less is more. So we will continue to optimize our web forms, we'll continue to test and learn, et cetera. But as you are engaging with those students, both in this way and others, less is more. And at the bottom here, are you asking for more information than you need? That can be a little bit intimidating as a student decides whether or not they want to provide their information. And so at the heart of it, that's part of what has made the conversational inquiry form so powerful. Obviously, it does engage with the student in a different and kind way, like a conversation, as you have heard your partner success manager or your strategic leader talk to you about. There is going to be another opportunity. The next wave of CIFs or conversational inquiry forms will be activated in July. So look out this week for more information if you don't already have this, and it's a great opportunity to get it going and start to take advantage of that. So with that, we've engaged the students, we've translated that to action through the conversational inquiry form, and now we're translating that to performance insights. So some of you are on our audience analytics portal and others of you are considering that. As you can see here, these are the big dimensions of what the benefits of AAP are. So benchmarking against the EAB network, really getting deep in that respect. We'll go into a few more details in one moment. The individual visitor data and behavior is completely new. This was not possible in our old platforms, and this is something that is really powerful to understand more about an individual inquiry. And you can find out trends related to those specific individual demographics, as well as how they engage, and then think about tailoring both your cohort and your individual outreach in order to get them to cross the finish line. And then at the bottom, the filtering capabilities and the dashboard customization really makes the AAP platform or portal, as we call it, work for you so that you can spread this and really help leverage this across the entirety of your recruitment engine at your organization, and have them tailor it in order to really stand on the pieces that are relevant for them. So what we wanted to do is to take that how to and what, if that makes sense, and turn it into a set of strategic implications. This is based on conversations with those of you who were some of the first adopters and the early testers of the audience analytics portal and what you've started to engage to help it do. And it's really exciting to hear those stories of impact and how you have been leveraging it in different and kind ways. So for those of you who are just getting in there and or have not yet shared this type of information or suggestions or questions with our team, we highly encourage you to do so because we've only just scratched the surface of what this platform is capable of. So on the left-hand side, you can see what is different about AAP versus the previous analytics portal that we had on our legacy platform. So the deeper performance insight across all of those different dimensions. Traffic, engagement, and conversion. When we say conversion, again, that refers to in the virtual tour world, taking action based on the engagement that you had with that great content. So now you can also benchmark against other institutions at these deep levels by sector and size, other institutions by region, which actually was based on your feedback. That was not part of the initial iteration, and you asked for it, and we explored it, and we made that happen since the original launch. So thank you to those of you who were part of that early launch cohort who provided that feedback and were able to help us get there. And then lastly, your own performance. Period over period has been possible before, but year over year is new. And year over year, as you think about how powerful that can be, we can go back 2 years so you can see prior to COVID, how did things perform? During COVID, how did things perform? Based on a particular campaign or a particular event that you might have had at your institution, how might you segment and really get creative about those timeframes and look, again, both period over period as well as year over year to say, what exactly was the action I took to inflect my performance and how do I want to stand on and replicate that? So what does all of that mean? So that's exciting, all of that deeper performance insight. But as you think about what would we hope and expect that you and your teams will be doing with it on a regular basis, obviously in partnership with your partner success team, the first is placement. So we can use those traffic trends to help inform where that optimal tour location should be and make sure that you've got the biggest, best visual impact on both your sort of home.edu pages and your program pages. And there's specific tour destinations. We'll get into this a little bit later in the discussion, but that is a really great way to leverage all dimensions of your tour on the program pages that students are engaging with most. Promotion, of course, those campaigns efforts that we just discussed. And then finally, this will also help you inform where and how you want to add or refresh content. So Bill will talk about this shortly, but the opportunity to really open up the platform and on an up to quarterly basis, make sure that it's super fresh, relevant. There's a lot of different elements you can do, standing on that deeper performance insight. So all of this is exciting, but what we feel like is a whole nother level of excitement is the audience insight. So this is the insight into those individual inquiries and student behavior that we mentioned, and why that is so powerful, because that didn't exist before at all. And this enables you to take that entire snapshot of cohort performance as well as individual performance and ultimately take action on it. So you can see on the left-hand side, of course, all of those different filterable capabilities that we just walked through are also capable on the audience insight front. So think about how you can sort of map those pieces to each other. You can also, as you can see down there at the bottom, create, save, and share those segmented inquiry lists based on pretty much any dimension you can think of related to that specific individual, in order to really think creatively about how do I engage this person or this cohort differently. So when thinking about your world on a day-to-day basis, or not even day-to-day, more on a month-to-month or academic calendar planning basis, this is data that you can use to support your territory segmentation. You can identify opportunities to increase engagement. So I mentioned this at a high level. What this is really referring to, if you think about specifics, so you can identify students who might have clicked schedule a visit and follow up with those who have not yet done so. You can identify, you can actually filter to a cohort and then who has been inactive on my tour in the last 30 days and active on others in the last 30 days. You can do, those are just a couple of different examples of how you use those sort of tactical filters to drive those strategic objectives. I mentioned this closing the loop on early interest, but then in terms of tailoring outreach based on the academic season, you can look for app season, for example. You can filter by the incoming class term and maybe include parents. For yield season, you could focus on the high relative engagement score. So that basically means how students are engaging with your tour versus others, and recent activity that seniors have done in order to focus on that personal outreach. And so there's a lot you can do there. We've actually included another slide in this presentation that I won't walk through specifically, with a few ideas and instructions for you to pass along to your teams as you consider, how do I want to take action specifically on AAP in order to drive my strategy? So now we've engaged with the content, we've captured additional inquiries, we've flowed them to into the audience analytics portal, and now we have this new and powerful integration capability. Back in September, if you joined us then, we had talked about how we had an API that was available for all CRMs. Based on your feedback, we also created a Slate specific guide, obviously one of the more popular CRMs. And so you'll see there, if you choose to implement this API, your technical team can use that general guide, or if you have Slate, feel free to leverage those Slate specific resources that get even deeper in order to connect those dots for you all. For those of you who do have search, then you can see here at the bottom, we will basically take care of that element for you. So there's a seamless campaign data exchange. And of course, the virtual tour is integrated throughout your campaign strategy. So you will see that show up in the right places at the right time. And as you can see here, when that happens, and this is just kind of a general concept for all of us to remember, when we think about any of these best practices, or we think about any of our recruitment efforts, when you put those together and think about it as the 1 + 1 = 3, it truly is incredibly powerful. This is just an example of our partners who actually do work with us in search and virtual tour, and a snapshot of how that impacts the FAFSA completion rate, the inquiry to application rate, the campus visit rate, and the inquiry to deposit rate. So you can see that pretty much wherever you are considering within the funnel, there's a powerful sort of outsized impact. And we encourage those of you who don't work with us in search, to think about all of your different recruitment dimensions and how do you connect the dots across those different pieces so that you're also experiencing those outsized results. So with that, that brings us to our next bucket on the far right-hand side, which is all about the engaging the in-person and the virtual tools, especially in this post-COVID environment where that virtual evolution is not going anywhere. So I'm going to turn it over to Bill Wilson to take us through the next couple of sections.
Great. Thanks a lot, Ginny. And as Ginny had just mentioned, I'd like to take the next few minutes to share some of the ways our partners are leveraging our newer content and platform features to maximize the visitor experience, but also ultimately drive greater results from the virtual tour platform. So if we go to the next slide, obviously it's no secret that over the past year, we've all had to get pretty creative with our student outreach strategies. And one strategy that originated during the pandemic, but seems to really be here to stay, is leveraging our platform for guided or facilitated virtual tours. So how that works, if you've never done it before, is essentially you can have someone from your school, whether it's a student ambassador, current student, even faculty or staff, we can have them guide prospective students through the virtual tour over a Zoom meeting or web meeting. So very similar to what we're all participating in right now. And it's really a great way to allow visitors to connect with current students and faculty and staff and really hear what the university has to offer. A lot of times these are actually done live, again, similar to what we're doing right now. We also have the capability, or I should say you have the capability to pre-record these sessions. So again, just a really great way to allow your prospective students to hear from your teams what's great about campus. Now, our technology actually allows for flexibility in these situations. For example, we can disable audio and video guides and also disable those calls to action. So when you are hosting these types of events, we don't have to worry about any pop-ups or any prompts that would come up during that. So if anyone has any questions or would like to learn a little more information about how to facilitate that, I encourage you all to jot down the email address below, yvtechsupport@eab.com, and our team would be happy to walk you through exactly how to get that set up. Now, as we go to the next slide, another area that we wanted to highlight is that as the world reopens, leveraging virtual tours for on-site events can really be impactful. And our virtual tour, of course, works on any web-enabled device. So if you have, for example, at a recruitment event or a college fair, if you have a booth with a flat screen TV, you can actually put the tour up there. And I've seen this used at events, and it's really a great way to attract a crowd. You actually will see it from the other side of the room. You'll have students walk over, want to learn more. We actually have a number of schools that will even use this on campus. So for example, in their admissions offices or welcome areas, it's a great idea to set up one of these kiosks, which again, can really just be as simple as a web-enabled flat screen TV. And again, you can have this virtual tour playing throughout, throughout those events and locations. So when it comes to using this for on-site events, we actually have a custom autoplay link. So same email address as I had just mentioned previously, yvtechsupport@eab.com. If you have any questions about getting that set up, we can actually provide you with that custom link. So it will play on a continuous loop, which is a great way to, again, attract those individuals who might be interested in learning more. Now, as many of you know, QR codes are having a bit of a moment recently, and it's really been a great way to direct folks to websites or to content in a touchless way. And obviously, our colleges and universities that we work with are no different. So when it comes to QR codes, what a lot of our schools are doing is they're incorporating these codes into either campus signage or brochures to guide visitors directly into the virtual tour. So it's worth noting that when you leverage QR codes, you can either link to the main tour itself, or you can link to individual tour stops. So for example, some of our schools may have a large banner in their admissions office or welcome area that directs their visitors into the main virtual tour. Other times, schools might go a few steps further and actually have individual signage at each tour stop, which again would lead that visitor to that specific content. So think about if you have a visitor on site that, maybe they're there on a day where you're not running a formal campus tour, they can actually be standing outside of one of these buildings, but be able to see via the QR code any photos or videos or 360 content that we've created, and they can get into that very easily. So ultimately, what we're doing here is we are supporting a truly self-guided tour for your visitors that are on campus. And again, this has been particularly relevant over the past year due to the pandemic considerations. Now, continuing on with the concept of self-guided tours, it's important to note that many of our partners are taking advantage of our interactive map add-on, and this is also designed to support those in-person on-site visitors. So this has really been a crucial tool over the past year for schools who haven't been able to host the traditional ambassador-led or group tours, which I know has been a lot of schools on the call today. And we've seen that when it comes to leveraging the interactive map, as we go to the next slide, one distinction that I wanted to point out is that while the interactive map is designed to be complementary to the virtual tour and leverage a lot of that same content, there are some features that are incorporated or are native to the interactive map that I wanted to highlight that are specifically designed to support those on-site visitors. So the first is direction capabilities. This is often referred to as wayfinding. So simply put, this allows your on-site visitors to find their way from point A to point B. So as an example, if I'm a visitor and I'm in the quad and I want to find my way to the sciences building, that is now supported within our interactive map technology. So they can very easily find their way from point A to point B. The other unique feature of the interactive map that isn't specifically included in the virtual tour is something called trails. Trails are really a great way to highlight tour stops or buildings that appeal to a particular audience. So as an example, you may have a housing trail, and on that housing trail, you'll be able to see all of the buildings or dorms or residence halls that are relevant to housing. So it's going to call out those 3 or 4 or 5 buildings and actually set up a dedicated path or trail, helping your visitors find their way from one location to the next. Another way we've seen that done, or another way we've seen that leveraged or utilized, I should say, is for program specific. So you may set up a sciences trail, which again would highlight all of those buildings where sciences classes or majors are housed. So again, just really helpful to allow your on-site visitors to find those locations and ultimately that content that is highly relevant to them. Now, on the next slide, we highlight some of the newer features that are related to the interactive map. And some of you might actually be surprised to learn that the interactive map itself is not terribly new technology. In fact, we've offered some version of it over the last 4 to 5 years. But with a lot of the renewed interest we've seen in the interactive map over the past year, our team has prioritized a lot of new enhancements. And just on the screen below, you can see just some of those enhancements that we've rolled out over the past several months. We have also another enhancement release that's scheduled for later this month. So definitely for anyone who has the interactive map currently, certainly look out for that. And you will see continued enhancements over the course of the next year and beyond, as the interactive map has again become very prominent on our product roadmap, and definitely something that we are continuing to put a lot of our development and product efforts into. Now, one last note on the interactive map, I wanted to highlight how one of our partners, Stony Brook University, has leveraged the interactive map over the last year. Like many institutions, Stony Brook was, really completely closed to on-site visitors for much of the past year. So in an effort to support those on-site visitors, they began promoting self-guided tours that were powered by our interactive map. But what I really like about their initiative, and the reason why I wanted to highlight it today, is they actually set up a landing page that not only links to the interactive map, but also also includes key information around safety requirements. And if you see on the screen there, even parking considerations. So really ensures that everyone who's coming to campus has that same experience. And as far as a testimonial, I don't think it gets any better than that quote you see at the bottom of the screen there, where a prospective student at Stony Brook had said, "This is so easy." And of course, that's exactly what we're going for. We want to make sure that we're really providing a world-class experience for both your virtual visitors through the virtual tour, but also your on-site visitors through the interactive map. And even with the pandemic now waning, student preferences have changed, and we do expect that self-guided tours will continue to very much be the norm, not just currently, but also for the foreseeable future. All right, so from there, wanted to just take a couple more minutes to chat through some research findings that our team has uncovered related to student communication behaviors and preferences, and then also how our partners are curating virtual tour content to match or to mirror those student searches. As many of you know, here at EAB, we're very proud of the deep insights we're able to deliver to our partners, and these insights are, of course, very much grounded in our ongoing research efforts. So in our latest student communication survey, which we released this year, we actually surveyed over 15,000 students, and we uncovered a real treasure trove of useful information around student search and communication preferences. And the first insight that I wanted to share is the one that we have on the screen right here, which is showing how students are actually undertaking their searches. So specifically when a student is typing, or in many cases nowadays, voice searching on a search engine, we're able to see exactly what they're searching for, and the type of searches that they are using are on the screen here. So kind of highlighted there with the orange circles are a few of the types of searches that really stood out to us. The first one being searching for academic majors. And in fact, I think it's important to note that this was the top search type. So before an individual even gets into thinking about what type of school is right for me, or what location, they're immediately thinking about their particular major and does the school offer it within their program. So this is something that definitely we would want to make sure that we're highlighting and reflecting in any content that's part of the virtual tour. Not too far behind that would be the search for geographical location. So this is certainly something that is top of mind for students and prospective students thinking about where the actual location of the school is. And then another one that we wanted to highlight, it's a little further down the list, but searches related to athletics. Obviously, only a subset of your students are going to be potentially athletics inclined, but when you think about the fact that not everyone is going to be thinking about athletics, 14% is a pretty strong number there to let you know that that is where a lot of students are actually beginning their search. So wanting to make sure that that type of content and messaging is apparent for them as well. Now, if we go to the next slide, I also wanted to highlight some insights we had uncovered around considerations students have when they're making their final decisions on which school to actually enroll. So as you can see here, affordability and location are by far the two biggest factors. And location in particular is one that I wanted to call out because it's worth noting that this actually ranks higher than it did 2 years ago. So I think this is certainly something that we can chalk up to the quote COVID-19 effect, that where a campus is located relative to that student's home is perhaps more important than it was a couple years ago. So definitely being able to highlight affordability and location and tying that back to the virtual tour, we would definitely encourage you to make sure that you're showcasing that content and that messaging, which is highlighting financial considerations and also location aspects, because that is really going to pay dividends and have a very positive impact on yield. So as we go to the next slide, one of the best ways to highlight and promote specific aspects of your institution is through the use of mini tours. So I know many of you on this call are probably familiar with mini tours, but I did want to make sure that we highlighted this because it really goes hand in hand with a lot of that research that we just shared, and specifically how prospective students are expecting to be able to view very specific and personalized content really at all stages in their admissions funnel. So on the screen here, we've highlighted a few of the most common ways that our partners are leveraging virtual tours. Academic programs, meaning mini tours that are very specific to a particular program, are, I would say, by far the most popular way. We find that it's really just a great way for schools to highlight individual majors and programs and really drive very targeted results. So just to give you a quick example, let's say for an example, you have your main virtual tour, but then you also have a school of business. Chances are you probably have a tour stop on your main tour that highlights your school of business. But if we were to look at creating a mini tour for that school of business, it really allows us to do a deeper dive into those individual programs and classrooms and majors. And it's going to provide a lot more relevant information for those individuals that, in this example, are business inclined. But we could also do that for your other programs, for engineering, for sciences, basically anything that you have that are top programs that you either want to highlight or you want to make sure that you are improving your recruiting numbers for. So academic programs, definitely a very popular option for a mini tour. Another would be a location-based mini tour. This is something that we're seeing more and more lately. Allowing your visitors to actually see what it's like in the surrounding city or town around campus. We all know that it's very unlikely that a student is going to spend 100% of their time on campus. So being able to highlight, leisure activities and nightlife and any regional culture can be a really great way to help that prospective student understand, where they might be spending nights or weekends or some of those options that are available to them. So obviously location-based mini tours are very helpful. And then last one I wanted to highlight here is residential life. This is something that we've also seen more and more, allowing students to understand individual dorms, individual room types. We also find that it can be helpful to distinguish between undergrad housing options and graduate or potentially even lower classmen and upperclassmen. So residential life, again, just allows much more of a deeper dive into those individual dorm room and room types that you offer, and really at the end of the day allows your prospective students to picture themselves as being, quote, at home at your school. Now, we've outlined some of the more popular use cases for mini tours, but I don't want to just stop there, and we could probably talk about a couple dozen different use cases here, but really it's only limited to, to your imagination and to your priorities as an institution. So some of the other areas we've seen over the years is athletics, highlighting multiple campuses, dedicated student life tours. We even have some schools that have kind of branched off into alumni or advancement focused tours. And a lot of times those will actually have totally different calls to action. So instead of driving, recruiting or, initial inquiry capture as an undergraduate focused tour often does, alumni tours might be driven more toward fundraising or to getting individuals to make a donation. So definitely something to think about. And then lastly, international is something that we've seen over the last couple of years. Having a tour that really, kind of personalizes the campus experience for your international prospective students is something that can be very helpful as well. All right, so last thing that I wanted to touch on here in my section is a little bit about content updates. And I think a lot of us are aware of some of those updates that exist, but I do think it is helpful to make sure that you are aware of all of the options that are available for us today. And one of the big ones that I wanted to make sure that I mentioned here is that moving forward in our contracts, we now allow for quarterly content refreshes. So that means that up to 4 times a year, you now have the flexibility to make changes to your tour. So that can be swapping out your landing images. That can be, if your tour includes interactive elements, changing out the photos or videos or other content that we have a part of that. It can include making updates to the text of your audio guide or changing or swapping out the tour stop orders. So this is actually a pretty significant shift for us. For those of you who have been UVisit partners for many years, you probably recall that the platform used to be pretty closed down. It used to be anytime you would want to make a change or a shift in your content or messaging, it would typically involve sending a studio's photographer or representative out to campus to capture that content. So this is one of the big changes that we've made over the last year and a half, is effectively opening up the platform, making it a lot easier for you to make those updates and allowing you to do it more frequently. And in conjunction with these quarterly content refreshes, your partner success manager or strategic leader will work with you to share basically the metrics that we're seeing and think about how we can, make sure that we are showcasing that content appropriately. So a great example of that would again be that updating your tour stop order. If you have a tour stop that, let's say, is your 16th out of 20, but it's getting a lot of activity and a lot of visitors, we may want to consider moving that up in the list, making it more prominent, moving it more toward the beginning part of the tour. So again, those are just a quick example of some of those insights that our team will share with you on a quarterly basis. Now, when it comes to the fuller, more comprehensive refreshes, we always offer a few options there as well. An on-site content capture from our team, where we would send out a representative or representatives from our studios team, photographers and videographers, to capture that on-site content, is always an option. A lot of you on this call have shoots currently scheduled or have done one recently. Others may want to look at refreshing the content in more of a fuller way. So again, that's something, please do reach out to our team if you would like to get on that schedule. We do find that generally speaking, every 2 to 3 years is a good timeline to think about doing a full campus refresh. So if it's been that long or longer since you've had our studios team out to do one of more of those fuller campus shoots, might be a good time to start to think about that. We do differentiate between the full photo shoot, but then also a full photo plus video shoot. So if you did want to leverage some of those more advanced elements that we've talked about, like action zones, for example, that would fall under a photo plus video refresh. And that's something that we would be able to plan for you ahead of time prior to our team coming out. Now, a newer option that not all of you might be aware of is our new self-capture option, where we can actually take content that you would provide us and make updates to the tour remotely. So if you are a school that has photographers and videographers on staff and would like to capture that content and send it over to us, we can incorporate that. And as part of that, make that part of the new changes to the tour. We also have a brand new option, which we call the Panoramic Accelerated Capture Kit, or PAC. This is really a self-capture kit that we would send out to you that includes everything you need to capture your own 360 photography. So if you don't have a 360 camera at your disposal, or maybe you don't have a photography or videography team, this pack can really be a great way to capture that 360 content. And again, make sure that your tour is fully refreshed. Our studios team assures us that really anyone can use this, so you don't have to be a photographer to be able to use this pack. We can send you all the instructions you need. We have some great video tutorials that we've put together that show you how to use that. And then again, this can be a great way to make a lot of those updates. Generally speaking, pretty quickly. We can usually get those updates up and running for you, usually within about a month or two. So these are things that can have a pretty significant impact on your current cycle results. All right, so from there, I'm going to hand it back to Ginny, who is going to talk through some best practices around virtual tour placement and promotion.
Wonderful. Thank you, Bill. So as Bill was mentioning, and sort of throughout the conversation we just had, there are a lot of different elements that we can work with you on in order to keep your content fresh and relevant, and really start to tailor that or curate that to address a specific need or objective that you have as part of your recruitment goals. But that's only as good as, are you putting that in front of the right students who need to see that content and to engage with it at the right time in their experience. And so that's where all of those pieces come together, and doing so really prominently is also kind of a table stakes element of making sure that you're maximizing the impact of your virtual tour. So clearly these pieces, these places on your admissions page are going to be the most obvious places to put your virtual tour, but there are lots of different immersive approaches to doing so. As you can see on the top here, this is our immersive banner that actually rotates slowly, and it's really engaging. If you haven't already considered featuring your virtual tour in this way, that might be something to talk with your partner success team about, because having that really front and center can not only engage people in the virtual tour itself, but really encourages them to take a hard look at the other aspects of your web page, engage in the content, and really bring that to life overall. That said, we also have the ability to hyperlink it, and you can, of course, embed that wherever you like, in signatures, in other places that a hyperlink might be the most relevant. Would say that, and Bill did actually mention this in a couple of different places. For instance, in the QR codes, we are able to link to specific stops. We can also do that throughout your web pages and your program pages in this way. This is probably one of the most powerful yet least utilized aspects of our platform that our partner success team would absolutely love to see done a lot more frequently, because really featuring those different stops, especially as it relates to academic programs, knowing that that is a key aspect of what students are searching for, and parents for that matter, is just a really powerful way to leverage that content. You can also, as you can see here on the right, there are some other frequent use cases, especially if you have one of those curated experiences that we just talked through. There's a great opportunity to post your residence life destination on your admitted students page. Of course, if you have a mini tour that's focused on that, you could put the entire tour there. The dining hall, and or if you have a student center or something related to student life, that's another great spot. And then finally, on the athletics front, especially knowing that research and knowing that that's a place that not only athletes, but also students who want to engage in that sort of broader sort of fan experience and sort of student loyalty type experience often look for. That's another great opportunity to allow them to immerse themselves in what it looks like when your mascot comes out, or when your team is really cheering on the field. There's just a lot of different really special opportunities to leverage your tour in that way. So at the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see this featured quite a bit, that you visit tech support at eab.com. They can help you with links, with a lot of technical questions for any of the different elements that we're talking about, or the ones that Bill mentioned as well. So thinking about the social channels then, again, sort of meeting students where we are, or where they are, you know, they're engaging in your web pages, in your program pages, and all those places that we just discussed. Of course, they're in social channels as well, and did want to feature the, or kind of share the idea that our highest performing EAB ad ever was actually a Facebook and Instagram feature of some content that came from a partner's virtual tour. So that's been really fun to see how the combination of that immersive content and beautiful content can really make a difference in those ads. It's not just about being there, it's about featuring the right type of information and the right engaging information that makes people want to go beyond that first click. So we have special sort of recommended ways to engage in each of these different channels. So it's quite simple, and we will be happy to support you in that way if you contact that group. And then lastly, kind of to wrap up all of those different pieces, is what happens when you use all of those different dimensions together. So wanted to share this short story about one of our partners, a public university in the Southwest, who actually from an enrollment standpoint was struggling during COVID, and was able to leverage their tour across a lot of the different dimensions that we discussed. They had to cancel all their in-person visits, and they really relied heavily on their virtual tour. So 1 in 4 of the students who inquired via the virtual tour ended up enrolling. So that was a really powerful statistic to understand that it was not just those who inquired, period, for that particular partner. It was those who engaged in the virtual tour that really translated into a much higher inquiry or conversion rate than the others, largely because they had engaged in what that student experience could really be. You can see this particular institution really wanted to highlight how beautiful their location was and how unique it was. And so that was a really key element of what they were doing in order to feature what was unique about them during a challenging time. So they really saw some substantial tuition revenue that was influenced by the virtual tour. And our call to action for you all related to this type of analysis is we would really encourage you, and we would challenge you in partnership with your analytics teams, to assess your overall funnel performance against virtual tour influenced inquiries. Because by and large, we will stand up and we will say that by and large, that always happens, that those inquiries are stronger as you progress through the funnel, regardless of what stage you're actually assessing. Obviously, that's a view, that's a lens that only your teams can see, but we are happy to work with you on, obviously, the portion that we do have access to, which is everything that is touched by the virtual tour. So with all that said, that is sort of wrapping all those different pieces together, and did want to share with you how we continue to evolve based on your feedback and based on that research that we shared and the type of information that we gather through surveys, through conversations with you, through all types of different interactions and touch points throughout the year. So when we gathered together back in September, again, for those of you who were able to join us when we first launched some of these key enhancements, we got your feedback. And as I mentioned earlier in the conversation today, the benchmarking by region was a really critical aspect of what you said you needed. And we were able to implement that since we launched in the fall. The conversational inquiry form, we continue to evolve. We've made that more fluid, more customizable to map to some of the needs that you shared. And then finally, on the interactive map, you heard a lot about the enhancements from Bill as to some of the changes we made for those of you who have that add-on as well. So we'll continue to listen to you all to understand more about those, and would highly encourage you to share with your partner success team what you love and what you'd like to see more of, and where there might be some challenges, because we are all ears in terms of what's going to make your experience more powerful, but also more seamless and efficient on your side, because we know your team's time is precious. Of course, all of that innovation also feeds our long-term planning. You can see here, speaking of time being precious, we are about to launch a centralized help center for a number of the resources that we discussed today. So that'll be coming across the next 6 to 12 months. Some of you have shared some of the desires that you have around the content management system or the back end, and how it would be even more seamless if it were a little bit more flexible. And so we have made a lot of improvements there, and we're excited about where it stands today, but there's some opportunity to get even better on that front. And so we are exploring that. The navigation experience optimization. Some of you have walking type tours, and others of you have moved to more what we call jump tours, where you explore different aspects of campus or the town, and not necessarily from a walking navigational perspective. And so we're exploring what are some of the best practices around the combinations of those, about how users will actually navigate the interface and what is the most powerful. And then finally, the enhanced engagement data. So this is around really understanding where are students engaging the most, where are they clicking, how are they using those interactive hotspots and positional media and action zones, for example, the languages, the interactive map, really getting a click or 2 or 3 deeper in terms of all of the different elements that we bring to bear throughout the virtual tour package, and building upon that. So with that, we'll leave you with a handful of recommendations and take a few questions that you all have put forth in the chat. So thank you for that. We've been monitoring that in the background. We want to make sure that you are, we will certainly do our part to bring to you insights, to do everything we can to help you maximize all of these different elements. So we would ask that you are optimizing the placement and promotion on a regular basis, that you are activating those enhancements, really taking advantage of what exists and leveraging your fresh and immersive content. We only know what you all bring to us in terms of, we have this new video, we captured this new information on campus. We would like you to come EAB and capture X, Y, or Z. So partnering with us to make sure that we're always aligned with your latest and greatest. I can't underscore how powerful those quarterly strategic reviews are. That is where we're able to translate insight to action. So everything we just discussed today, we will bring our part to the table. We would ask that you do the same, and we will put our heads together to make sure we are firing on all cylinders. And then lastly, really taking advantage of this technical support group. There should never be a situation where you feel stuck. This group can partner with you on anything technical, and our strategic leaders and partner success managers will make sure from a strategic perspective that you are in a great spot. One thing that just like to underscore in general is to treat us as a member of your team. Think of us as we like to call ourselves obviously a partner and not a vendor. And so treat us as though we are truly an extension of your team. Be open with us about what you're excited about, what the risks are from your broader enrollment goals, and we will bring to bear not only best practices from a virtual tour perspective, but also from broader EAB. So with that, I think we have time for one or two questions. One that came through here for Bill: how does a mini tour work? If we were to focus on one specific school, would this have to be a separate tour than the large virtual tour of campus we already have? Is there an additional fee?
Yeah, that's a great question. Probably a more complex question than the 30 seconds we have time for here. But I will say that the specific mini tour can be handled either separately and independently, or it can be fully integrated into the main interface. So for example, you may be able, if you create a housing tour, for example, you can see that as an option when you go into the main tour. It's also worth noting that each individual tour has its own links. So whether it is showcased as an option when someone first goes in, or if you want to keep it independent, either way, you can use those independent mini tour links in your comm flows and in your marketing and follow-up. Regarding fees, that is more of an institution specific question. It would basically depend on how contracts are currently structured. I will say, generally speaking, there is often a fee to get a new or secondary mini tour or virtual tour up and running, but of course that's something we can address on an individual basis.
Thank you. And then I think we'll have Duncan take this last one that'll take us home. Kind of a two-parter question. What can we do in our virtual tour to increase out-of-state enrollment? And then kind of paired with that, Duncan, if you don't mind, when will we learn more about Enroll 360?
Yes, so much more to come on Enroll 360 over the coming weeks. So check your inbox and engage on eab.com there. On the out-of-state, two ideas. A location tour, a town tour can be really productive for helping students understand what it's like to be on campus, but also to live in a different state. So that's an idea Bill surfaced that I'd encourage. And second is you've got to push the tour out. It can't just be for stealth shoppers, because out of state disproportionately need to hear from you before they're going to engage organically. And so pushing it out via Facebook, Instagram, graphic emails, engage with our team on how we can help you do that, because you're going to have to convince more strangers to become friends versus acquaintances to become friends from on the in-state side. So two suggestions there.
Wonderful. Thank you, Duncan. I know we're at time, and if you asked a question in the chat and we didn't get to it, we will follow up with you separately, but really appreciate your time and engagement. And I hope you took away some exciting, tangible ideas to maximize the impact of your virtual tour over the course of the next year in partnership with our team. Thank you very much.